Chapter 1. The Journey Begins. Introduction. Review of the oneness of consciousness. What we really are. Why are we here? And what is the purpose of our life?
Hello, fellow truth seekers. My name is Dieter Gedijk. Just as with my previous video series, Introduction to the Ancient Wisdom, most of this information came about while focusing on one word or concept at a time, and by collating the digitized classics written by H.P. Blavatsky, C.W. Leadbeater, Annie Besant, Alice Bailey, Lucille Cederkrantz, my teacher, Douglas M. Baker, and many more. Then I tried to come up with the best way to reconciliate this information with my personal experiences and present it here for you. I apologize to those teachers if I erred in any way. For those of you with no esoteric background, I left many details out, and I encourage you to study the books referenced. Furthermore, it is my sincere hope to inspire somebody to present this information in a more professional fashion. Thank you for watching this video. Introduction to The Art of Dying and Beyond. First, I must point out the need to have watched my three-part video Introduction to the Ancient Wisdom in order to aid you in understanding the subject at hand. If you have not seen them, go to douglasbaker.org and click on the Ancient Wisdom videos. The first 3 videos prepare you for this one. They are free to watch. Second, whenever I use the words death or dying, you can substitute these by passing on or focus of self-consciousness to a higher plane. There is no death, only change. Third, with this video I address primarily the experience of the average person today in the West. At times I will cover certain groups of people and how their experience differs from the norm. You can download a list of references used from my website douglasbaker.org. Just search for part number 6061. With this video I shall attempt to answer: how do we survive the grave? What do we survive in? What sort of environment surrounds us when we survive? What is the purpose of survival? Reality is stranger than the human mind can imagine.
Review of the oneness of consciousness. With this quick review of our consciousness between the physical plane and the upper mental plane, you are shown that all consciousness is one. Incarnation starts when we establish first the mental body, then the astral body, and finally the etheric and physical body. These vehicles and concentrations of soul consciousness we refer to as the incarnated soul, and the accumulation of physical, emotional, and mental energy make up the personality. Notice the image on the right. Consciousness has attracted matter of that particular plane it is residing on. Here it is shown pulled apart, but in reality, all matter, planes, and consciousness exist in the same space. Like gas intermingles with water and water with sand. The task ahead: soul identification. I am the soul. What we really are. Now we should contemplate what and who we really are and come to the realization that we are so much more than we were taught. If what I now tell you causes conflict in you, good. The journey you are taking is that of self-identification. Every step on this path causes you to identify yourself as something greater. This in turn causes doubt and confusion. Stick with it, my fellow student, and you will succeed. We are not our physical body, nor our emotions, not even our thoughts. We must recognize them as energies we have appropriated and put to use for the purpose of building a personality. In our true nature, we are not men or women, male or female. We are not a king, queen, husband, wife, shoe salesperson, business executive, etc. We are the incarnated soul, having externalized vehicles of consciousness like the physical, emotional, and mental bodies. In so doing, we limited or buried our true nature and powers. The personality that came about isolated itself via false teachings and the need to survive, and we, the soul, lost virtually all influence as the personality matured. This is often referred to as the death of the soul. Because we imprisoned ourselves in form or substance, death is the process of release from that form. We must realize that the final objective is the complete liberation of all consciousness from form on the physical, emotional, and lower mental planes. Only equipped with this knowledge will you understand the process of death and beyond.
Why are we here, and what is the purpose of our life? It is the evolution of consciousness and becoming self-conscious on all planes. To manifest the highest and most spiritual qualities as personality. This is how we, the soul, grow. To aid our fellow brothers and sisters and attune ourselves to the purpose of this incarnation. To become conscious of our part in this grand scheme of life and aid in the evolution of humanity and this planet. Death, birth, and karma are all part of the cycle of reincarnation and must be considered together. Death is the recall of all good experiences into the soul.
The early Christian Church taught reincarnation, but removed it from the scriptures about 382 AD. Then, for obvious reasons, the Church made itself the gatekeeper to heaven and the forgivers of sins. The lack of right knowledge and false teachings about what comes after physical death created the prevailing fear about this process. The great unknown colors all anticipation as negative and frightening. Let's change that. There is no death, only change of state and entrance into a fuller life. Today, the majority of people on the planet believe that we are reborn again and again. They also believe that when all human karma is resolved and our true nature is perfected, rebirth into human life is done and we move into the next higher kingdom. We are spirit having a human experience. Chapter 2, Physical Death. Introduction to Physical Death and Restitution. Shedding the physical body, elderly, mature adult. Sudden accidental and war death. Suicides and consequences. Young children and babies. Earthbound good and bad people. Aspirants, disciples and initiates. The case for cremation. Summary.
Physical death, esoteric term, restitution.
There is a technique of dying just as there is of living. Our ideas about death have been erroneous. We have looked upon it as the great and ultimate terror, whereas in reality it is the great escape, the entrance into a fuller measure of activity, and the release of the life from the crystallized vehicle and an inadequate form.
This portion of the journey, starting with the shedding of the physical body, is part of the cycle we call reincarnation. In this video, I will only outline what the ancient wisdom refers to as restitution, elimination, and integration. It covers physical death up to the final transfer of focus for the distribution of energies from the personality to the soul.
It is our sincere hope that one day, in the minds of those left behind, sorrow will find no place, and the deathbed will be regarded as a happy occasion like births and marriages. Nightly sleep can be considered as occasional dying. The only difference between sleep and death is that in sleep, the magnetic thread or current of energy, sutratma, along which the life force streams, between soul and sinus node of the heart, is preserved intact.
Awake, awake, awake to dreams no more.
There are many ways we know death can happen, and each type will experience a different transition. One of these can be that the soul desires to initiate physical death in order to more rapidly obliterate past karma, or terminate an incarnation if the personality strays too far from its fixed design. Here we will explore just a few. Further, for easier reading, many details were left out. Therefore, the student is encouraged to read the materials pointed out in the list of references, part number 6061 at www.douglasbaker.org. We will look at the average good person, elderly or mature adult dying of a disease, accidental and war death, suicides, young children and babies, earthbound good and bad people, and aspirants, accepted disciples and initiates. So-called evil humans and lost souls we will deal with in the section Introduction to Hell.
Shedding the physical body. The average good person, elderly or mature adult dying of a disease. When the person has a terminal illness and there's little hope of recovery, it is most certain that it is the soul recalling its personal self, the personality.
When it has been determined that the death of the person is imminent, silence should be maintained and only orange light be used. This will help the soul to hold possession with clarity until the last minute. 90% of the time, when a dying person is in what appears to be a coma, they are fully conscious. No music, mantram, or singing is recommended. If possible, the top of the head should be pointed to the east, feet and hands crossed. If incense is used, then only sandalwood. The ancient wisdom tells us, much of what follows you will find in Esoteric Healing, a treatise on the 7 rays, Volume 4, The Act of Restitution, on pages 460 to 478 by Alice Bailey. The soul sounds forth a word of withdrawal, and the physical body responds immediately. Physiological changes take place at the seat of the disease, then in the bloodstream, the nervous system, and the endocrine system. A vibration runs along the nadis, the etheric counterpart of the entire nervous system. The nadis react to the pull of the soul and organize themselves for abstraction. The bloodstream becomes affected in a peculiar occult manner. This is caused by the glandular system injecting a substance into the blood which in turn affects the heart. That's where the life thread is anchored, and this substance is one of the causes of coma and loss of consciousness. It evokes a reflex action in the brain. A psychic tremor is established, loosening or breaking the connections between the nadis and the nervous system. The etheric body is thereby detached from the dense physical body, but still interpenetrates it. The Sutratma life strand anchored in the sinus node of the heart is withdrawn. A pause frequently ensues to carry forward the loosening process and to allow this to be as smooth and painless as possible. This process starts in the eyes. It promotes relaxation, lack of fear, peace, willingness to let go, and the inability to mentally fight the process. The dying person's consciousness is still preserved. The etheric body begins to gather itself at the point of exit, loosened from the nervous system. It begins to withdraw first from the extremities via one of the exits. For the average emotional person, this is the solar plexus. The more spiritual, kindly person, an aspirant, it is the area just below the apex of the heart. For the intellectual, spiritually advanced person, disciples and initiates, the exit is the anterior fontanelle at the top of the head. As the final withdrawal of the person's consciousness proceeds, the vague instinctual consciousness of the physical body's element of appearance, some call it deva of appearance, begins to resist the pull of the soul. As explained in Dita's previous videos, this physical elemental is in total the spirit of the earth and is on the involutionary arc and opposes the soul's work to raise man towards spirit. It is the elemental's instinct to preserve its physical form, and it fights dissolution. But death is not yet complete, for the brain is the last organ of the physical body to die. For some time after the heart has ceased beating, the brain and its memory still remain active, and, although unconsciously so, the human ego for this short length of time passes in review every event of the preceding life. This great or small panoramic picture of the past, Akashic records, is purely automatic. The person watches this wonderful review scene by scene, a review which includes the entire course of thought and action of the life just closed. This review serves to sort out the best and noblest parts and preserve them for the life to come in the mental plane.
Based on my personal experience, this in duration as measured by us takes only a few seconds to 2 minutes. The scenes run backwards towards childhood and are so brilliantly clear, precise, detailed and in color that our present-day physical brain memory is a washed out blur in comparison. These scenes, down to the smallest detail, are the truth, the real ones, even though we forgot them a long time ago.
When the scenes digress to infancy and conception, the Sutratma's connection in the physical brain is withdrawn by the soul. Then follows a brilliant flaring up of pure electric light, and the body of light finally breaks all contact with the dense physical vehicle, focuses for a short period in the vital, etheric body, and then disappears. The etheric body has now emerged from the physical body and has assumed the vague outline of the form that it energized. There is still a slight rapport between the two, and this keeps the spiritual man, in his astral body and mental vehicle, still close to the body just vacated. This is one of the many reasons that cremation of the physical body is so important. The person's individuality is not lost. It still persists, is still in touch with the qualitative and mental processes of existence, remembering all from his physical life. He now stands in his astral mental body. Now some fall asleep, while many others consciously move through a tunnel towards a bright light at its end.
It seems that the tunnel phenomenon serves as a shield to protect the individual from an awareness of the lower portions of the astral world. It is a shift in consciousness from one level to another. More on this chapter, life in the astral plane and elimination. As a final thought, I must add this. In today's Western world, too many terminally sick are kept alive beyond their wish and the intent of the soul. Lack of understanding death, monetary interest, and legalities complicate the dying process today.
The 13th century Persian poet Rumi wrote these words: I died as a mineral and became a plant. I died as a plant and rose to animal. I died as animal and I was man. Why should I fear? When was I less by dying? Yet once more I shall die as man, to soar with angels blessed, but even from angelhood I must pass on. Sudden accidental and war death. In cases of sudden death through accident, suicide, murder, unexpected heart attacks, or through the action of war, the shock is such that the somewhat leisurely process of soul withdrawal is entirely preempted. The vacating of the physical body and the complete dissolution of the etheric body occurs almost simultaneously. The physical elemental has no chance to oppose the vacating of the physical form. In all cases, there has been no destruction of human self-identity. Other than suicide, for sudden death victims, the law of karma is almost never involved, and it is not a soul-controlled process. It is not considered an act of restitution.
Suicides and consequences. This is mostly a violation of the soul's plan or fixed design. A negative karma is created that might take a long time to be worked out. Under karmic law, suicides must sometimes spend in the astral world a period as long as their life would have been on earth. Depending on the circumstances and other factors, many suicide victims must forego the heaven world or the mental plane and reincarnate soon after life on the astral plane. In the astral or emotional plane, That which they try to escape from will haunt them, but substantially amplified. Instead of having escaped their problem, they now suffer even more intensely. Suicides undergo the same separation from the physical body as an accidental or sudden death victim. Suicides for a very noble cause are rare, and their experience and karmic consequences can differ substantially.
Young children and babies. Prior to the 7th year, the vitality of the physical elemental is largely the determining factor. The etheric, astral, and mental vehicles are many times no more than a sheath. The soul's focus is in the etheric body, and it exerts just a gently pulsating control and activity. This is sufficient to preserve consciousness, to vitalize the various physical processes, and to begin to form the character and personality. When physical death occurs due to an illness, his or her astral nature may be quickly absorbed into the astral body of the mother or sometimes even the father. The reason for this is the fact that most of the child's astral and mental matter was drawn from the parents. If the astral body of a child is sufficiently integrated, they will go on into the astral world and grow up for the duration of the soul's intent. In this case, the exit would be via the solar plexus area. The physical elemental puts up resistance, but restitution is quick.
Earthbound good and bad people. These could be good people who had to leave their physical body while worrying about loved ones like children and spouses suddenly left behind. Some of those parents are drawn so strongly by love and concern to their children that they for some years hover near them to provide guidance. Others who do this might be those who are highly anxious over their business affairs or want to undo some evil act they committed. These people go through the normal process described earlier, but might fight the process along with the physical elemental, making the transition so much more difficult. More about this in the chapter Life in the Astral and Elimination. Some of those earthbound bad people are the extremely materialistically oriented, the severe drug addicts, and the alcoholics. These will also fight physical death, and their vices will draw them as close as possible to the lower planes of the astral.
According to one of H.P. Blavatsky's masters, no man dies insane or unconscious. Even a madman or one in a fit of delirium tremens will have his instance of perfect lucidity at the moment of death, though unable to say so to those present. Aspirants, disciples, and initiates. With disciples and some aspirants, the conflict is more mental and is often focused on the will to serve, to fulfill a particular aspect of the plan for humanity, and to return in full consciousness to that work. In the initiate's mind, there is no conflict, only a conscious and deliberate withdrawal. The third initiation results in the complete liberation from the pull of physical, astral, and mental substance, so that restitution and elimination is a very quick and controlled process. If there is a slight conflict, it will be between the physical elemental and the mental life remaining in the personality. In all three above, the disintegration of the etheric body can be very rapid. The exit occurs in full consciousness via the head region within the area of the anterior fontanelle. The case for cremation. Cremation is kinder to the dead. better for humanity itself, and will become of even greater concern to environmentalists anxious to purify the planet and to prevent its further pollution. What could be worse than polluting the soil of the earth with disease-ridden bodies discarded at death, which could so easily be vaulted out of their resting places by any geophysical cataclysm to pollute the earth once more? It should never be forgotten that those virus conditions which often cause death, like the influenza virus of 1918, are crystalline in structure and can survive in dead bodies in the soil indefinitely and have been responsible for several world epidemics.
Organ donations. Those of you who consider this should know that to a certain extent you will share the karma with the recipient and vice versa. This could influence your duration and quality of astral and mental plane life. I advise against it. Giving blood is much more benign. Occultly, as long as the esoteric shell exists, it is faintly linked to the departed soul and personality, the personal soul. This burdens the continuing process of the life in the astral world. Cremation hastens this separation and prevents negative or elemental forces to use this etheric shell for their purpose. Cremation also helps purifying the astral plane. The preservation of the body, like mummification, substantially increases the time the personality has to spend in the astral world before moving into higher planes. This could be hundreds of years.
There remains on the other side of the threshold of physical life, in the etheric world, the shadow of the man that was. The ancients called these human shadows shades. Modern children and nursemaids call them ghosts and spooks, and each such shade is but an eidolon, or astral image or pale copy of the physical man that was. This eidolon coheres for a while in the astral realms or in the superphysical ether, etheric, and its particles are magnetically held more or less coherent as long as the physical corpse is not fully dissolved into its component elements. But these eidola, in a comparatively short time, fade out, for they decay in a manner closely resembling the disintegration of the physical body.
Summary. Dying has many important functions without which immortality would not be possible. In death, we discard the worn-out fragments of our physical vehicle, corrupted as they are by disease, aging, and sheer abuse. There is no angry God, no hell as we are told, and no terrible atonement. It is actually here in the physical existence in which we must atone and work out our karma. Here is the plane in which suffering of every sort of pain takes place for almost all of us. Restitution results in the dissolution of the physical body and the return of its elements, atoms, and cells to their originating source. The moment immediately preceding death from disease is that of total insensitivity to pain and a delightful passivity. Restitution should be a happy occasion, and it is as important as birth. Cremation of the physical body must prevail over burial from now on. Longing for the physical earth life will also prolong the escape from the astral plane. You have to weigh the positive and negative karmic consequences of organ and blood donation. Blood donation is much more benign since those cells normally live a much shorter time.
A poem by John Spencer Moorhead called quiet. There is a flame within me that has stood unmoved, untroubled through a mist of years, knowing not love nor laughter, hope nor fears, nor foolish throb of ill, nor whine of good. I feel no shadow of the winds that brood. I hear no whisper of a tide that veers. I weave no thought of passion nor of tears, unfettered eye of time, of habitude. I know no birth, I know no death that chills. I fear no fate nor fashion, cause nor creed. I shall outdream the slumber of the hills. I am the bud, the flower, I the seed. For I do know that in whate'er I see, I am the part, and it the soul of me. Chapter 3. Hell. Introduction to Hell, and Avicii and the Eighth Sphere or Planet of Death. Introduction to Hell. Here we briefly touch upon the so-called Hell. There is a real location and state of consciousness so depraved and evil that redemption in the astral is almost impossible. There are even today such groups of people on this planet who willingly and on purpose become soulless. Their desire is to become as influential and wealthy by any means and remain in the physical as long as possible. It is total misuse of energies for selfish purposes and is known as the black arts. Some of those even call themselves a religion. There is an appropriate sphere for every degree of development of the human condition. Each gravitates to that appropriate sphere of vibrational matter and consciousness, and remains there until it is thoroughly purged of their condition or the soul is destroyed. Some even refer to the physical life as hell, because here, via pain in every area of our constitution, we have to work out our karma.
Avicii and the Eighth Sphere or Planet of Death. There is a state that comes close to what could be called hell. Let us see what the teachers of the ancient wisdom tell us about the subject.
The teaching is, simply, that each entity after physical death is drawn to the appropriate sphere to which the karmic destiny of entity and the entity's own character and impulses magnetically attract it. As a man works, as a man sows, in his life that and that only shall he reap after death. Avicii has many degrees or grades. Nature has all things in her. If she has heavens where good and true men find rest and peace and bliss, so has she other spheres and states where gravitate those who must find an outlet for the evil passion burning within. They, at the end of their Avicii, go to pieces and are ground over and over and vanish away finally like a shadow before the sunlight in the air, ground over in nature's laboratory. The Eighth Sphere. Frequently, the term is confused with Avicii, but this is incorrect because the two, while closely connected, are nevertheless quite distinct. While Avicii is a state where very evil human beings die and are reborn without interruption, yet not without hope of final redemption, something which can actually take place even on our physical plane in the cases of very evil or soulless men, the Eighth Sphere represents a degree of psychomental degeneration still more advanced. As just hinted, even in Avicii there is a possibility of re-ensoulment by the ray of the spiritual monad, whereas in the Eighth Sphere or Planet of Death, such possibility finally vanishes, and the entity which is sunk to the planet of death is what is technically called in the esoteric philosophy a lost soul. In the eighth sphere, the lost souls are ground over and over in nature's laboratory and are finally dissipated into their component psycho-astral elements or life atoms. The eighth sphere or planet of death is an actual globe. It is also, of course, a state or condition of being, whereas the Avicii is almost exclusively a state or condition in which an entity may find itself, although obviously this entity must have position or place, and therefore locality in space, on our Earth or elsewhere. Avicii, a state of consciousness, not necessarily after death or between births, for it can take place on Earth as well. Literally, it means uninterrupted hell. The last of the 8 hells, we are told, where the culprits die and are reborn without interruption, yet not without hope of final redemption. Where, however, it is the result of deliberate choice or of preference for wrong action, in spite of knowledge and in defiance of the voice of the spiritual nature, then this type of karma leads to what the Oriental occultist called Avicii, or the 8th sphere, a term synonymous with the Christian idea of the condition of being a lost soul. These cases are, however, exceedingly rare, and have relation to the left-hand path and the practice of black magic. Though this condition involves the severing of the highest principle, that of pure spirit, from its 2 expressions, the soul and the body, or from the 6 lower principles, yet the life itself remains, and, after the destruction of the soul in Avicii, a fresh cycle of becoming will again be offered by the monad.
Chapter 4. The Astral Plane. General statements. The astral plane visualized. General statements. The astral plane, also called the astral light, the plane of glamour, illusion, and emotions. This is what the Greeks called Hades or underworld, and Christianity the purgatory or intermediate state. Today, the ignorant believe only what our 5 senses detect is real. Science tells us that only 5 to 6% of the matter in this universe is visible and can be measured by them. All else they call dark matter and dark energy. The ancient wisdom has held for eons that this unseen matter is etheric, astral, mental, and even finer matter on higher planes. Astral matter is fluid, and in its original state was pure astral energy directed via the Logos into our planetary life. Since humans developed the solar plexus chakra and became astral, emotional beings during Atlantean times, we have shaped this matter into any conceivable form. Every emotion and thought are instantly given here a form out of astral elemental matter. We are told that when humanity has evolved away from its emotional makeup, the astral plane will disappear. This might be thousands of years in the future. The astral plane, like all other planes, we divide into 7 subplanes. However, each of these planes has almost an infinite number of layers of increasingly finer and rarer matter as we move further away from this planet. Nevertheless, we should not think of this area in rigid terms, but rather fluid, overlapping, and interpenetrating. These subplanes contain many areas or bubbles created by man to act like favorite neighborhoods. Here the discarnate of like vibration and interest flock together to live out their astral life. As closer to Earth, as grosser the vibration and the inhabitants. Today, the highest astral subplane extends just past our moon. Just 100 years ago, it had not reached the moon yet. The astral world actually has a location as described previously. When we talk about the planes above that of the astral, we refer to them as state of consciousness within even finer matter and vibration. The astral plane is a tremendously dynamic world. Travel within this environment is only limited by the vibrational matter and consciousness of your makeup. There's a constant movement of human beings drawn up towards the mental plane by the soul, and the downward move towards a new incarnation. Even some of the more evolved animals are here for a short time in their astral bodies. Many other life forms can be observed here. Remember that we share this planet with at least 5 other streams of life, each of these having a huge number of forms moving through the astral and mental planes. Some of these are the elemental and deva kingdoms. Our emotions right now have a substantial effect on the astral world's content. An example would be the very positive, highly emotion-provoking show by Oprah Winfrey starting in 1986 and running for 24 seasons. Large areas of the astral world were wiped out and restructured instantly by the up to 26 to 42 million viewers each week. We do not create new astral elemental matter, but only attract, concentrate, and shape it. The astral plane visualized. Here is an image I hope will aid you in understanding the astral world. Imagine this region of astral matter extending from the earth into every direction, each containing these areas or neighborhoods. I show these here made up of higher, lower, and very low vibrational quality. In reality, the astral world is in constant motion due to the rotation of the planet and many other factors. Notice where I place the surface of the planet. And here is where we might find the so-called earthbound persons. Here the bad persons and suicides. And here perhaps the very evil humans.
The astral plane has almost infinite levels of matter, containing from the grossest to the very finest, from the lowest denizens below the surface of Earth to the most refined, bordering on the lowest mental plane. It is mostly the vibrational quality of the emotional matter, energy, we build into our astral bodies during physical life and the circumstances of our passing over that will determine the level we initially end up in. The astral world is where a person still in a physical body goes after putting his or her body to sleep. Some will bring back vague and fragmented images upon awakening and call it a dream. But while there, and if trained to see clearly, it is more real to them than this physical life. Hearing on the astral plane is commonly called clairaudience. All sensing is done using the surface of the entire astral form, and the range of sounds and sight are much further extended.
Chapter 5. Life in the Astral Plane and Elimination.
General statements. The tunnel experience, purely emotional and emotional mental persons, integrated persons, Underdeveloped persons, earthbound good and bad people, suicides, victims of sudden and violent death, earthbound entities addicted heavily to drugs or alcohol, children, babies, aspirants, disciples and initiates. Conclusion.
General statements. The stage of elimination is the process by which persons live out and eliminate those lower emotional vibrations in astral matter from their vehicles via attrition. When all of the astral matter is discarded or lived out, the second death occurs and the person moves into the mental plane. The same basic rule applies to all people, but the experience differs in each case. Just like the physical body consists of various densities of solids, liquids, gases, and etheric matter, so does the astral body consist of many variations of astral matter. We determine the vibrational quality we build into our physical bodies via the food we eat and the environment we live in. The same way we decide the astral matter we build into our astral body via our emotions, hate, love, jealousy, kindness, spirituality, or evil. And again, I must emphasize the fact that what you do here while still in the physical body will determine the quality and duration of your experience in the afterlife.
The tunnel experience. After shedding the physical body, many people will experience moving through a tunnel towards a bright light to stand before an exalted being, a welcoming light or a being of light. It has a very definite personality, and the love and the warmth which emanate from this being is absolute. This is, in most if not all cases, the moment of direct soul contact. This is due to the fact that even the most ignorant and undeveloped person, the moment of complete restitution is noticed by the soul. Some report being greeted by friends and family members who died before. But remember, the average stay here is about 20 to 30 years our time. During and after this time, many of those you have known moved on to higher levels of the astral or even into the mental plane. What we understand by time is non-existent once we lose our physical brain.
This tunnel experience I consider more like an elevator ride. As you rise from the physical into the astral world in your body made up of astral and mental matter, you should get off on the floor, level or cell you belong on. This is the natural law and best for you. As you rise, you might see scenes on lower levels go by. Do not linger, regardless of how familiar or interesting they might appear. As explained previously, the astral world has many cells or neighborhoods, and one of these is just right for you. So let the quality of your makeup carry you where you are supposed to be.
In fact, in this model of death, that part of the journey would correspond to a high-speed crossing through a number of intermediary levels in which the generally untrained consciousness of the dying man has better not to loiter on the way, lest he should have dangerous encounters with the tremendous powers lurking in this astral zone, in the form of unchecked energies and alluring, horrific pictures defying all imagination. From the writings of Helena Blavatsky.
Purely emotional and emotional mental persons. The statements below apply to mostly emotional persons and those having achieved some balance between the emotions and mental focus. Upon arrival here, the person would describe this world as an absolute reality. Most good emotional people discover themselves upon the astral plane, clothed in a shell of astral matter, with whatever mental substance was accumulated. All are committed to a period of elimination within the illusory world of the astral plane. This area holds prisoner the many people who die whilst their major reaction to life is that of desire, of wishful thinking, and of emotional consciousness. These are still the vast majority of humans, and they initially have only access to the astral plane.
These people have lost some of their acute awareness of their body's needs like hunger, bowel movement, pain, etc. Arthritic knees, a missing limb, the need for sleep, the illness they died of, and depending on how you picture yourself, are gone. I refer you to many books available on the subject. Virtually all new arrivals will go through a period of confusion by what they see here. It takes some time to interpret the images perceived due to the now extended senses of the astral body. Their activities like gardening, playing an instrument, or pursuing further education will continue even with greater ease and speed. Where does all this come from? This whole world, within the astral, was shaped and populated by humans still in the physical body via thoughts and desires and adapted to their needs by the individuals after arrival.
Now we can talk briefly about the astral body you will find yourself in. First, you will notice almost no difference. For the average good person, death is a continuance of the living process. Whatever interest he or she had before will be carried forward. Many will not even realize that they lost their physical body. Here, your vehicle of consciousness is made up of many grades of exceedingly fine matter and looks just as you think of yourself, and frequently younger. The astral body has all the sense organs like ears, eyes, nose. We don't use these at all. Close observation will reveal that every type of the body's different quality particles are in constant motion and intermingle. In fact, we are using the entire body's surface as sense organ. But now we have gained, besides those senses we were used to, several improvements on them. For instance, the colors are so much more vivid. We can see all sides of an object simultaneously. Smell a flower from a distance. No more pain. Clearer perception. And so much more. Here is something not often taught in esoteric schools. Initially, the average, mostly emotional person entering the astral world will be able to see some or most life within the various levels of this plane. But not too long a time passes before the matter of the astral body arranges itself in onion-like layers. The grossest matter on the outside, and from there finer and finer matter towards the center. This is caused by our astral elemental trying to fight the dissolution of the astral body, just as the physical elemental did during physical death. Arranging of astral matter with the coarsest and grossest matter on the outside provides the greatest resistance to dissolution. The astral elemental instinctively instills the fear of dying in the person, and if given into it, his or her movement towards higher planes will be seriously delayed or hindered. This can be avoided via certain knowledge, since it is the outer layer that serves as the sense organs. The obvious consequence is that the person's senses become restricted to perceiving and interacting only with the matter of that subplane.
The integrated person. The persons with an integrated personality have reached a point of balance between mental and emotional focus and maturity that promotes logic and reason. These people have what is called the freedom of the dual life, and find themselves within a well-developed astral and mental body, which enables them to contact at will the higher levels of the astral plane and the lower levels of the mental plane. These persons use two methods of elimination. A. They eliminate the astral body by means of the growing desire for mental life. They withdraw gradually and steadily into the mind body, and the astral body esoterically drops away and finally disappears. B. They are attracted towards the soul and shatter the mental body by an act of the human will. Knowledge of these matters will greatly assist this.
The undeveloped person. For the undeveloped, death is literally a sleep and a forgetting. Where the mind is undeveloped, the inner person finds him or herself practically smothered in an envelope of astral matter, and is for a long time immersed in the astral plane. Those people drift at their level of the astral planes like wrapped within a cocoon, unconscious to the outside world while dreaming of their life on the physical plane. They should not be disturbed, and no attempt to wake them should be made. Earthbound good and bad people. They too will sooner or later rise to the level in the plane their makeup of astral and mental matter dictates. All those diversions and hindrances will wear out and fall away. Whatever held them back will have resolved itself, and children will have grown up. Their payment for this is extra anguish, pain, and time they are spending in the astral. The condition and duration of their stay within this lower astral level varies widely from person to person. It strengthens the hold of the astral elemental on the person's astral body, making it harder to overcome its resistance later.
Suicides, victims of sudden and violent death. In the case of accidents, the normal experience is not unpleasant, varying from near unconsciousness to vivid but dreamlike memories of Earth. Because of the shock of this type of transition, they tend to be in the lower areas of the astral, reliving again and again what they were into when passing. This is especially pronounced with soldiers dying in battle. They tend to continue fighting their enemy for some time. Not a pleasant scene to watch. Suicides are fully conscious in the lower astral plane. During this time, they suffer according to the motive for taking their own lives. If their deed was from a high, unselfish motive, then their period of consciousness is not intolerable and sometimes even rewarding. If the motive was selfish or cowardly, they will suffer remorse and regret, amplified many times and for a long time. The karmic consequences are substantial and could produce damage for lifetimes to come.
In all cases, sooner or later these energies wear out, and the person takes up his or her place within the astral plane determined by their qualities of astral and mental matter. However, Each person in these groups must remain in the astral world as long as their normal lifespan would have been in the physical body. Earthbound entities addicted heavily to drugs or alcohol. I need to briefly mention the type of earthbound people who are for a while bound to the astral plane lowest to the physical earth plane. Many of these people, having committed suicide with drugs or alcohol, are attracted to bars, drug dens, alcoholics and drug addicts still in the physical body while they sleep. Here is what my teacher, Dr. Douglas M. Baker, observed in the Astral.
The fate of those alcoholics who take their own lives only to find themselves still earthbound by their attraction towards alcohol and its fumes. In that work, I showed that one of the main causes of both alcoholism and the difficulties experienced by those trying to recover from it, to dry out, or to win their way back through convalescence to normality, was the constant vampirism upon the individual by astral entities who had once been themselves alcoholics. In an alcoholic coma, it is possible for astral vampirism to occur because in this state the liver, busily metabolizing the alcohol, cannot separate entirely from the astral body, and this linkage point provides an attractive area for astral entities to sip at the astrophysical fumes of alcohol in this region. Taken from Life After Death by Douglas Baker and Alcoholism, The Hidden Significance by Dr. Douglas Baker. For instance, the third division is of an intensely vivid nature. Extreme delirium carries the patient to this plane. In delirium tremens, the sufferer passes to this and to the one above it. Lunatics are often conscious on this plane where they see terrible visions. The fourth division, the worst of the astral plane. Hence comes the images that tempt, images of drunkards, impelling others to drink, images of all vices, inoculating men with the desire to commit crimes. Extreme delirium tremens is on this plane.
Children and babies. Where a child's astral body is more defined in shape and somewhat integrated, survival as an independent being is possible. Usually they have to be carefully led through a process of maturing emotionally, which is accompanied by the integration of the astral body. In this way, they may grow into adults, usually of an extraordinary refinement. Such children are watched over by guardians in the astral world, who are carefully selected for this purpose. From here, all normal rules apply. Babies, not having built a sufficient astral and mental body, are not responsible for their actions and cannot receive either reward or punishment. They begin a new life, an incarnation, immediately.
Aspirants, disciples, and initiates. For many aspirants and all disciples and initiates, physical death is an immediate entrance into a sphere of service they are accustomed to in the astral and mental planes. They will go directly and in full consciousness from the physical plane into the mental plane. While the third initiates were at will conscious in the astral and mental levels while still in the physical body, the former two might have been only conscious there while their physical body was asleep. All three groups now have access within the astral and mental planes to work and learn within their master's ashram without sleep, and so much quicker. Special circumstances permit foregoing the rewards of the heaven world and a quick return into reincarnation to continue the work. However, per Charles W. Leadbeater, this might require the person to remain in the astral world while waiting for the right body or circumstances to become available.
Conclusion. All those who lived their required span of time here have used up or worn out via attrition the old behavioral and emotional patterns. The longing for something higher increases and they undergo the second death. There is no struggle to stay in the astral world since all the lower desires and matter have been shed. Only the most noble feelings and finest astral matter remain, and now even this falls away, and the person becomes fully conscious in the lower mental plane. What they leave behind is an astral shell which in time fades away and all particles are returned to their source. These shades, as we call them, can still be motivated by some of the previous owner's consciousness. Before they fade out, it is these shades that at times are contacted by psychics. By doing so, some mediums are doing karmic damage to the departed, perhaps even for lives to come. The original owner has departed, and this is why in some of the seances the shades display no original thoughts. Chapter 6. The Mental Plane. General description. A teacher's description.
The mental plane, also called the heaven world by Christians, Valhalla by the Vikings, Devachan by the wisdom, the plane of illusion, etc. We must remind ourselves that time and space as we know it on earth does not exist here, and subplanes are only states of consciousness. The fineness, rarity, and quality of the matter you build into your mental sheath determine at what level of vibration you place yourself. The student must clearly understand that the words higher and lower have nothing to do with location. However, Leadbeater tells us that the mental plane interpenetrates the astral world and extends even further into space than the astral plane. This plane is also divided into 7 subplanes. The 4 lower subplanes we number 4 through 7, and the 3 higher subplanes 1 through 3, counting from above. In these planes, the matter is even rarer and finer than in the astral plane. The average man's soul exists on the 3rd mental subplane. The average man's mental body resides in the lower section, subplanes 4 through 6. Less evolved humans' mental bodies can be found on even lower vibrational levels of the mental plane. Remember, the term plane denotes a range or extent of some state of consciousness and rarity of matter. All matter here occupies the same space.
Here is where mental telepathy is possible between 2 or more individuals. Here the concrete mind of man resides, and from here thought forms originate. When fully conscious here, no misunderstanding between persons can come about. Every thought, motivation and feeling is laid open to 2 or more conversing people. All that is known of a topic by one person is presently known by the other. Thinking of a place will take you there virtually instantaneously. On higher levels of the mental plane, the long line of past lives can be reviewed, and karma still to be worked out can be known. Describing any scene in this level is virtually impossible. Many attempts have been made by every religion, every prophet, books, and poetry written. Every time the scene was described, it seems totally based on the belief and consciousness of the reporter. It is even harder to attempt to describe the unfettered and blissful state one finds themselves in.
A teacher's description. Do not complain and cry and pray, but open your eyes and see. The light is all about you. If you would only cast the bandage from your eyes and look, it is so wonderful, so beautiful, so far beyond what any man has dreamt of or prayed for, and it is forever and forever. To take one only of many possible examples of our difficulties, it would seem as though on this mental plane space and time were non-existing, for events which down here take place in succession and at widely separated places appear to be occurring simultaneously and at the same point.
And now we come to our last chapter, Mental Plane Life and Integration. General description. The emotional persons, the integrated and spiritual persons, the aspirants, disciples, and initiates. Conclusion and a bit about reincarnation.
General description. The freed consciousness then moves into the mental world, a world in which form has practically vanished and in which symbol and image have become paramount. In the mental world, the last of our personality behavioral patterns, reflexes, and memories are slowly discarded. And after a period of 20 years, another death occurs as the last vestiges of man's form structure are dispensed with. The residual consciousness, really the spiritual essence of all experiences of the previous life, leaves behind the mental unit and anchors itself to the mental permanent atom in the heaven world. And while the consciousness very peacefully broods over the spiritual events of the last life, the soul extracts the remaining elements of Atma, Buddhi, and Manas, which, directed into itself, stir further the opening of its petals of consciousness. This process usually takes about 1,000 years in the heaven state, depending on the ray of the soul. Some require somewhat less, usually about 700 years. It should, however, be emphasized here that there are many exceptions to these basic rules.
Today, the stay in Devachan is somewhat shorter because of the vast increase in available human physical bodies during the last 100 years. Now the soul takes greater and greater interest in the person approaching the higher planes. But the average person still has to shed much of the mental makeup before experiencing that state of bliss the Christians call heaven and the wisdom calls Devachan. The purpose of our earthly life is to gather ever greater qualities like love, goodness, harmlessness, intelligence, etc. The long journey of redemption, elimination, and integration is to cleanse the portion of oneself, the personality, from all that by which the soul cannot grow. Only the very best qualities gained can rise into the higher mental subplanes, where our true being, the soul within its causal body, resides.
One earthly human body does not last long enough to bring the soul's lotus, its attributes and qualities, into full bloom. Hence, the soul must incarnate and withdraw that part of itself again and again, beautifying and growing its causal body and self via this joining, absorption, and integration of all the worthwhile essence of its personality life just completed. It is said that this can take about 777 incarnations. The word and image of the lotus is only symbolic, but it helps us to visualize its growing qualities. In reality, the soul within its causal vehicle is a self-conscious, group-conscious, and logos-conscious entity, and a vortex of force or 12 energies held together by the will of the overshadowing monad. The causal body, or egoic egg, is spheroidal in shape and expands with each incarnation until it becomes a sphere of pulsating light of great beauty. Further, when the soul incarnated, it forfeited its free and blissful state and entombed part of itself in flesh. Esoterically, we refer to this as the soul's death. This imposed a true limitation on the soul's group consciousness.
As your consciousness expands and you can fully experience the higher mental planes, you begin to understand the lesser reality of the life on the planes below. The brilliance of color, the so much more less hampered thought processes, the lesser or non-existing gravity, painlessness and speed of travel will convince you more and more of the fact that the physical and astral realms are less real. The subjective and mystical death of the personality. This is a phrase indicating the transfer of the focus for the distribution of energy from the personality, a definite center of force, to the soul, another definite center. A treatise on the Seven Rays, Volume 3, Esoteric Astrology by Alice A. Bailey. The process of integration is dealing with a period wherein the liberated soul again becomes conscious of itself as the angel of the presence and is reabsorbed into the world of souls, thus entering into a state of reflection. Esoteric Healing, a treatise on the Seven Rays, Volume 4, page 433, by Alice A. Bailey. The emotional, simple persons. After a long process of attrition in the astral world, is left standing free within an embryonic mental vehicle. And this period of semi-mental life is exceedingly brief and is brought to an end by the soul who suddenly directs his eye to the waiting one, and of the power of that directed potency instantaneously reorients the individual karmic man to the downward path of rebirth. Esoteric Healing, a treatise on the Seven Rays, Volume 4, page 498, by Alice A. Bailey. In this case, the soul has gained little to grow its qualities. However, the additional attributes like mechanical skills, adaptability, emotional steadiness, mental agility, etc., are not lost by any type of person. These qualities are also stored as vibrational qualities in the permanent atoms and benefit the soul in its next incarnation.
The integrated and spiritual persons. This person is inspirited by the soul's intentions and has subordinated the mind to this purpose. When this point in evolution is attained, the person can then dissolve the last remaining vestiges of all desire by means of illumination. In the early stages of purely monastic or mental life, this is done through the illumination which knowledge brings and involves mainly the innate light of mental substance. When illumination is complete and the hour of soul contact eventuates, and the monastic mental vehicle is in process of destruction, he, the person, becomes immediately aware of the future, for prediction is an asset of the soul consciousness, and in this the man temporarily shares. Therefore, past, present, and future are seen as one. The recognition of the eternal now is gradually developed from incarnation to incarnation and during the continuous process of rebirth. This constitutes a state of consciousness characteristic of the normal state of the advanced man, which can be called devachanic.
When this point in evolution is attained, the man can then dissolve the last remaining vestiges of all desire by means of illumination. In the early stages of purely monastic or mental life, this is done through the illumination which knowledge brings and involves mainly the innate light of mental substance. Esoteric Healing, a treatise on the 7 rays, Volume 4, page 499, by Alice A. Bailey.
In all men lurks the light, yet in how few has it blazed forth as rightfully it ought, illuming from within our fleshly lamp, and kindling cosmic flame in nigh-brought souls. Splendor of God, how few, and ours the blame, for ever crassly by routine and wrath we undiscerningly damp down and choke the spark of God that glints in every child. All children are, by nature, bits of God, and God, if they but had their freedom, would unfold himself in them, would burgeon forth tinting and moulding, till as perfect flowers they bloomed, fulfilled of loveliness unveiled.
The aspirant, disciples, and initiates. The desire of the aspirant, disciple, and initiate is to work off karma quickly, to liberate himself for service. There is no desire for a period of rest and devachan, and he seeks to work in his master's ashram or rapidly reincarnate. We call this the path of renunciation, and for this the student should remain waiting in the astral world. This and other options are possible depending on his development, certain laws, and the full concurrence of his soul and his master. An aspirant is often called a probationary disciple. In my previous videos, Introduction to the Ancient Wisdom, Part 3, Personality Integration and Introduction to Meditation, I stressed the importance of strengthening the antakarana and purifying the lower vehicles. This work and the rainbow bridge from the personality to the soul and beyond now facilitates the ease and speed in which restitution, elimination, and integration will occur.
The disciple now uses more occult methods, but upon these I may not here enlarge. The destruction of the mental body is no longer brought about by the destructive power of light itself, but is hastened by means of certain sounds emanating from the plane of the spiritual will. These are recognized by the disciple, and permission to use them in their proper word forms is given to him by some senior initiate within the ashram or by the master himself towards the close of the cycle of incarnation. Devachan is the fulfilling of all the unfulfilled spiritual hopes of the past incarnation, and an efflorescence, a drawing out of all the spiritual and intellectual yearnings of the past incarnation, which in that past incarnation have not had an opportunity for fulfillment. It is a period of unspeakable bliss and peace for the human soul, until it has finished its rest time and stage of recuperation of its own energies. In the devachanic state, The incarnating ego remains in the bosom of the monad or of the monadic essence, in a state of the most perfect and utter bliss and peace, constantly reviewing and improving upon its own blissful imagination all the unfulfilled spiritual and intellectual possibilities of the life just closed that its naturally creative faculties automatically suggest to the devachanic entity.
Conclusion and a bit about reincarnation. Here are some factors that determine the duration before the soul readies itself for incarnation again. The need of humanity and the will of hierarchy to accomplish a certain mission requiring this type of soul. How much good essence the last incarnation provided. The soul's requirements to work off karma. The karmic relationships with others created in the last and previous incarnations. We tend to incarnate in groups of souls to work off karma we created with each other. The soul reincarnates into the time and place most suited to gain qualities it is lacking. Other circumstances governed by rules and laws. This tiny part of life's description I sent into the world with the hope to encourage you, my fellow student, to undertake further studies and to understand yourself better. All these planes, all the different life forms, and so much more together make up in reality one mighty living whole. Reincarnation is not an endless cycle. It is like an upward winding spiral, ever building upon the qualities and abilities gained during previous lives. And may you also one day remember, I raided as a pirate. I stole from others in the dark night. I tilled the soil as a farmer and prayed as a monk. I worked the wood as a carpenter and the stone as a mason. I healed others in need, and I fought as a soldier. But now I use technology to improve lives. Blessings upon you.
Wordsworth's Ode on Imitations of Immortality, from Recollections of Early Childhood. Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life's star, hath had elsewhere its setting, and cometh from afar. Not in entire forgetfulness, and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God, who is our home. Heaven lies about us in our infancy. Shades of the prison house begin to close upon the growing boy. But he beholds the light, and whence it flows. He sees it in his joy. The youth, who daily farther from the east must travel, still is nature's priest, and by the vision splendid is on his way attended. At length the man perceives it die away, and fade into the light of common day. From the unreal lead me to the real. From darkness lead me into light. From death lead me to immortality.